And that morning, the streets of London were buzzing like any other day. But no one knew that a little girl's innocent hug would forever change the life of a royal guard. Tourists crowded outside Buckingham Palace. Tour guides rambled, kids ran around, and camera shutters clicked non-stop. Amid the chaos, the royal guard stood tall, unmoving, unreadable, untouchable, like statues. In the middle of the crowd was a 5-year-old girl named Emily, wearing a pink dress and clinging to her mother's hand. It was her first time in London. But while everyone else was staring at the palace, Emily's wide eyes were locked on something else, or rather, someone else. A soldier towering, still as stone, with shiny boots and a tall black bearskin hat. He looked like a storybook character come to life. Before her mother could even notice, Emily slipped away. Step by step, she made her way toward him carefully, slowly, like it was the most natural thing in the world. The crowd didn't even register her at first, but the guard did. He saw her, not with his body, he didn't move an inch but with his eyes. Just a flicker, just enough. Emily reached the barrier, she looked up for a long second. And then, without a word, she wrapped her tiny arms around the guard's leg and hugged him. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Everyone froze, phones were lowered, conversations stopped mid-sentence. A little girl had just broken one of the oldest unwritten rules in London: don't touch the Queen's Guard. And then he moved, his shoulders relaxed. His head tilted ever so slightly, and then, breaking every rule in the book, he slowly dropped to one knee. The 6-foot soldier, now eye level with a child, gently placed one hand on her back and hugged her back. It wasn't loud, it wasn't dramatic, but it was powerful, it was human. The crowd erupted into applause, some cheered, some cried. Emily's mother rushed forward, overwhelmed, but the moment had already taken on a life of its own. By the next morning, the video had gone viral across the globe. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, everyone was talking about the moment a hardened royal guard melted at the touch of a child's love. The hug that broke protocol, stone-faced no more, one child, one guard, one unforgettable moment. But the most touching part came later when someone asked the guard why he broke rank. His reply, "I hadn't felt something like that in years. That little girl reminded me I'm still human." Since that day, tourists who pass by say he seems different. His eyes softer, his posture less stiff, as if that brief moment had carved out something in him that had long been buried. Maybe it was just a hug, but sometimes the smallest gestures leave the biggest marks. 4 weeks after the moment went viral, strangers from around the world sent letters to Buckingham Palace, some addressed to the guard who hugged the little girl. Messages came from Brazil, Japan, Canada, South Africa. Veterans, teachers, parents, even former guards themselves wrote in. "You reminded us what real strength looks like. You gave us hope in a world that feels too cold too often." But for Emily, it wasn't about the headlines. It wasn't about the likes or the shares. It was about the feeling that someone she didn't know, in a place she had never been, made her feel safe. Seen back home in Yorkshire, Emily asked her mother every night, "Do you think he remembers me?" And he did. In a quiet barracks room, far from the public eye, the guard whose name was Thomas sat on the edge of his bunk, holding a crumpled drawing in his hand. It was from Emily, a stick figure with a big black hat and a smiling little girl holding his hand. He kept it in his coat pocket, right over his heart. Thomas wasn't just a soldier, he was a man who had seen war. A man who had lost brothers in combat. A man who had learned how to lock his emotions away so tightly, it felt like they'd never come back. But that one hug, simple, silent, pure, had cracked the walls he didn't even know he'd built. The next time he stood post at the palace, people watched him differently. They whispered, they pointed, but Thomas stood proud. Not just as a symbol of discipline, but now of compassion too. And then, one sunny morning, something incredible happened. A familiar voice called from the crowd, "Mum, it's him, that's him." There she was, Emily, with her pink dress, now a little shorter on her growing frame. Her hair was longer, her smile just as bright, and this time Thomas smiled too. Not with his mouth, of course guards don't do that. But his eyes, they softened the moment he saw her. Breaking protocol once again, Thomas leaned down just slightly and whispered, "I remember." Emily ran up to the barrier, placed her hand on it, and whispered back, "I missed you." The moment wasn't filmed. There were no viral clips, no applause. Just a quiet reunion between two souls who had touched each other in ways the world could never fully understand. Some tourists may have walked by without noticing, others may have looked on in silence. But for Thomas, that day wasn't about guarding the crown, it was about guarding something far more fragile: connection, memory, meaning. And for Emily, it became the story she'd tell for the rest of her life. About the day she hugged a royal guard and melted the heart the world thought couldn't be moved.